today to have two organizations, Cal Matters, it covers the state of California, and Local Santa Cruz, which covers Santa Cruz. So, but not everyone decides to start a nonprofit and to start a news organization. So I was hoping that each of Neil and Kara could just share the story of how they started their organization.
And this is such a special opportunity for us. Our community engagement and business development coordinator, and a big part of Natalia's job is listening to Santa Cruz County. Say hello to Natalia. She's eager to hear from you. Yeah, it's just, it's a dream. I can't believe that we're here today.
Hardworking people at the Mercury News, at the Sentinel, and any newspaper left in America. People in there who are busting their tails every day to take care of their communities and feel the same way you feel about Santa Cruz. But the people who own those companies don't. And they don't have that kind of commitment. And you see that, I see some Mercury News veterans here nodding their heads. As hard as we all work to do this every day and take care of your communities, it's harder when the company you're working for has a different interest, right? Which is about cash flow and building their investors' dollars.
The election, an election is very much like our Super Bowl, right? Like, you know, we get everyone's attention. So I'm just curious, you both did election guides. And I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about your election guides and maybe some insights or ahas or surprises during that election time.
Which election?
Well,
That's a good question, but we'll start with the most recent one.
Yeah, this past year was a big election year in Santa Cruz County and our state. I'm very proud of the way that we cover elections. Our whole approach is about trying to put power into residents' hands. Too often in other local newsrooms, it's editors and reporters deciding behind closed doors, what are the issues of this election. We tried to flip that on its head and really ask residents, what do you want the candidates to talk about as they compete for your vote? So over the past year, we interviewed about 300 Santa Cruz County residents. We surveyed about 150 more, just asking them that questions. What do you need from local government? What do you want the candidates to talk about? What kind of help or resources do people need right now? We went to food banks, stores, the farmers markets, gatherings, festivals all over the county, and talked to everyday people. And the top themes we heard were, I think no surprise, big need for affordable housing, a need for help with rent. That was the first thing out of anyone's mouth when we went to Watsonville, for example. A need for, a desire for solutions to homelessness, need for better wages and jobs, and a desire for better walk and bike infrastructure. So we took these top themes that we heard and pressed the candidates on what we heard. We produced an election guide in English and Spanish. It was read by tens of thousands of people in our county. We saw huge spikes in our traffic in June and November. And our election guide also included info on how to get involved, because a lot of the people that we talked to weren't registered yet, didn't know how to get a Spanish ballot, for example. So we had a lot of that info about how to access the elections.
Cal Matters traffic charts over the 8 years it's been around, it kind of bubbles along, and then there's an election, it goes way up and it comes down, not all the way down, and it bubbles along and spikes again. a lot of people, when I introduce myself as being from Cal Matters, they go, "Oh, you're the voter guide people." I'm like, "Yeah, we are." And I appreciate that. I'd love to tell you about the other 23 months between elections when we do that, because there is a lot. But we succeed with our voter guide because that is answering the question people are asking. They kind of spend 30 seconds on the setup and then the clock starts. They do a minute, but I'm good with that. And they show you the pro and the con. They explain what's going on, where the money's coming from, what has happened with it since it was, who's endorsing it, who's against it, in both English and Spanish. And those things, those videos, will get a tremendous amount of attention. We found them being shared. They were picked up by radio and TV stations. There was a news director at a small station on the Central Coast who said, "I'm so grateful for these." We took the 1-minute videos, made them into audio for all the radio stations in California. He said, "I'm so grateful. I've stacked all these up to run all week. That's the first week off I've had in 6 months."
Express a lot of appreciation for your election guides, because I, as a parent, I now will have 2 teenagers voting in the next election, and when I show them the ballot and when I show them the booklet that we get, it's really overwhelming. And so I think these are resources that we have and that we need to spread the word and share. So I'm incredibly appreciative. But Neil mentioned that, it's not only during election time that you're doing all this hard work. You're diving in deeply to issues, which we really need. And part of how I got to know Kara and Santa Cruz Local is that they are part of the Solutions Journalism Network, and they've received a number of awards as well. And it's really for that going deeper into the issues. So would you share a little bit about an issue you've covered and where it stands today?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Christy. One of the big issues that we cover is homelessness. We've heard time and again from residents that this is a topic that we want to dive deep on and really understand the complexities and nuances around. In 2021, we, thanks to about 100 Santa Cruz Local readers, we raised about $20,000 for a series on solutions to homelessness. As part of that series, we did like really in-depth interviews with about 25 unhoused people. We heard from them about, what are your barriers to getting housed? What are the biggest services that you need? What kind of solutions would you like to see? And we shared those voices on our website. I think too often with homelessness, we don't hear enough from the people who are actually impacted. So that is something that really sets our coverage apart, I think. As part of that series, we also heard from several landlords about their barriers for housing people who are homeless. So they didn't really, they had a lot of questions around how housing vouchers worked. So we had an explainer about how those vouchers work and tried to answer some of the questions and concerns that landlords had. A big part of that series was also we heard from a lot of people that they really wanted rigorous, critical stories about tangible progress on homelessness. So we went to Bakersfield, which is one of 5 communities in the whole nation that have achieved what's called functional zero for chronic homelessness. That means that in their whole county, they only have 3 people who are chronically homeless at any given time. Yeah, it's amazing. So chronically homeless people are among the hardest people to house. They've been homeless for long stretches of time, and on top of that, they have a physical disability. So we looked at, okay, how was Bakersfield able to achieve this? How does their process work? And what we learned was they have a really efficient system for getting chronically homeless people into housing. They're agile, they're coordinated, and they're open to new ideas. They have this framework where they test ideas and really build on what works. And so we, in an hour-long podcast, we broke down, how that system works. And this work is continuing. We've been working for the past several months on an investigation on how our cities and counties spend local, state, and federal money on homelessness. It's taken us many months. We've issued several dozen Public Records Act requests, and we've just been digging through the data, and we're very close to publishing. So stay tuned for that.
A million-person state. A couple examples of things where we've seen the kind of impact we hope to see during the pandemic. And again, there's no story in California bigger than housing and homelessness in any part of the state. How many of you said Bakersfield? Really? When she said that, right? Part of the job here is to open people's eyes to things that we're not seeing even across our state, not that far away yet, in many ways very far from here. We, during the pandemic, started to understand that there were these laws saying you couldn't evict people, and people were getting evicted all over the state. And we started, it's one of those stories you can do by interviewing a couple of people who got evicted, and we did that. But you have to get a sense of the scope, right? And so we went and collected eviction data from all 58 counties. And in some places that's easy, they have it available. In some places it's really hard. In some places you have to drag it out of somebody. And pulled all that data together, built a database. I think it was 16,000 different evictions that we were able to track across the state to show the breadth of the problem. And what was fascinating about that was, and we also did reporting on individual people who were being evicted and profiles of families who were on the edge of possibly being evicted. And that coverage had a real range of effects because, first of all, one of the families we covered, the kid really wanted a hoverboard for Christmas, and somebody in the community got it for him. We got a video from the family of him getting this little hoverboard he wanted, right? So as local and one person as you can. But then some of these city councils and then county boards of supervisors had conversations about this stuff, and based on this reporting, did their own legislation on it, changed the way their county sheriffs were handling eviction requests, because the sheriffs had always just jumped when a landlord said, I want to evict somebody. And then I was in Humboldt County last week at a high school journalism gathering with a bunch of very eager kids up in Eureka and Arcata who want to get into journalism. We're doing a high school program. We work with libraries, we work with other kinds of organizations to get the information out there. And we share everything we do with any legitimate media organization in the state that wants it. And so we provide all the stories that we do to Santa Cruz Local, and they can use them as reference, they can publish them, they can do whatever they want, they can ignore them. We talk to each other if there's a story where we have a data set that we want to share that they might find useful, or they've got a question that we might have an answer to. And we try to work together as much as we can on anything that'll help each other do a better job. We also, we're both part of a group of publishers, a group of online publishers called Lion, a national organization that is supporting organizations like ours around the country. And so part of what we do is try to help each other make our businesses survive and get our communities familiar with the need to support us. And that's why we, at Christie's invitation, we were very happy to do this tonight.
An event with Cal Matters and Vote.org. And that was when I think that you really got to know each other, and then we decided we would do something new. So it's just fun to bring different groups together and be highly collaborative. Yep.
I'm really excited about our plans to expand in South County. This year, we're planning to launch Spanish news for Watsonville residents. We've spent the past several months interviewing South County Spanish speakers about what kind of news they want and how they want it delivered. We've talked to teenagers, all the way up to older folks, retirees, all of them, or almost all of them, South County residents, almost all of them fluent in Spanish, or Spanish is their primary language. And what we heard was that people are really hungry for local news in Spanish. People don't really want to go to a website to access their news. They want, well, at least for this community, really wanted news in an audio format, in a way they could listen to while they're doing something else. And another big theme we heard is that people really want news that makes them feel proud of their community, because too often news about South County is about the problems, the crime, the gangs, and it just makes people tune out because it doesn't reflect the reality, the nuances and the complexity of the community that they know and feel. So we're really excited. We're hiring for 2 bilingual roles to allow us to produce this Spanish news. We're fundraising for it. We've raised about $60,000 so far. So yeah, just if you'd like to get involved, and I invite you to talk to me and learn more. I'd love to. New hire, but our thought right now is that we text audio links to people because people didn't really want to, go to a podcast app or learn how a new website or how that worked. They really wanted news that's delivered in an easy, accessible way, straight to them, where they can just click once and listen to the news.
Yeah, good. No, there, the Hmong Mayan community, where Spanish is a prominent second language, and the texting actually, they got anecdotes back from people saying, because you shared with me this information, I now understand what the vaccine is and why I need to get it, for instance. And so finding out how people actually consume news, people are using WhatsApp, what you're talking about with texting audio clips is great. We worked with a publisher of one of the Spanish language papers in San Jose. She's an expert on domestic violence reporting. And during the pandemic, there were a lot of concerns about domestic violence. And a foundation asked us if we would put a reporter on it. We said we could, but we're kind of busy. And there's somebody who's much better at this publication in San Jose. And so they gave us the money to pass through to her. She did the reporting on these stories, and then she bought time on Spanish language radio stations up and down the Central Valley in order to reach the audience that most needed to get this information. So I think we're a long way from having a great answer to your question, which is we know exactly how to nail the method of getting stuff to this audience in a perfect way. But the most important thing we can be doing is talking to people, learning how they want to get stuff, and trying a lot of ways to do this, and being quick to develop stuff and try it. And if it doesn't work, try something else. So, I mean, there are a lot of answers to that question. Certainly, AI is fascinating and terrifying all at the same time. It is here, right? It is part of what we do now. We have been working for close to a year on a project that's going to use AI to study the state government, all the data about campaign finance donations, how people vote in the legislature, all the data we have about voting records and the influences, who comes to testify at hearings. You'll also want to hear this. And we're going to be using this to look for anomalies in the data. When there were 150 reporters crawling all over the state capitol, they would see what was going on. This lobbyist met with this person, somebody in an office just handed me this piece of paper, and now I've got a story idea. That's not happening. A lot of the stuff doesn't happen in person. That number of journalists is no longer in the state capitol. It's a much smaller number. So we're going to use this technology to look at everything that happens, all the records we can pull, all the finance data, and look for signs of, this is somebody who voted differently than they used to. Maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. Not to write stories, but to get ideas.
Many of you came and endured a little bit of cold to listen to us. We appreciate that. My ask would be that you sign up for the newsletters, and that you give this a shot. If you're already reading Cal Matters, try Santa Cruz Local. So just try out the newsletters, because your feedback and your participation in the conversation is really important. I'd also ask that you become a subscriber. Kara was smart. She saw that I was subscribing, and so she reached out to me, and that's how I got connected with the organization. So, I really appreciate what they do, both organizations, and I've long been an advisor to Cal Matters as well. And so I would ask that you do that as well. Think about offering some support, and then please spread the word. So subscribe, support, and spread the word, please. And with that, I'll say a big thank you to Kara and the community. Feel free to stay. We'll like close up some doors so that people can get more inside. But feel free to stay. We'd love to have you.